So this is called a Royal Sovereign. It's Royal Sovereign is the brand name of this laminator. I got my experience on this type of machine at another sign company years ago, and the words that I mentioned to you were the very words that they mentioned to me. You can't really have a sign company without a laminator. You got to have a laminator. This one is pretty nice because it has a heat assist. So it's got some rollers in here, and those heat up and help melt the glue a little bit, so you get a little bit better lamination. A cheaper one doesn't have the heat, and they work, but to have the heat in here, it's a little bit better. So we have a spool on the back here that has a plastic laminate, and generally it's to help reinforce or protect whatever you're printing. It'll also protect from UV light, like I mentioned. It comes on a carrier, and so this is the take-up spool to take up the paper that the laminate rides on. The laminate goes down through and goes over this roller, and then there's a roller beneath that presses up on it. Apparently this Royal Sovereign company has, I don't know if it's a patent or whatever, but instead of just a plain flat roller, it's actually crowned in the middle, so it's a little thicker in the middle and it tapers down on the ends, and the idea is that it will force any bubbles or anything out to the side. So that's one of their claims to fame. You can see we have a protective cover on here, and if you looked real carefully, there's a little teeny tiny probe here. It's a little sharp piece of metal that when you press that down, it trips a micro switch, which lets the machine work. So on occasion you'll use this and you'll say, hey, it's not going. I pushed the button and it's not moving. And it's probably because this is just slightly not pushed down all the way. So the micro switch isn't working. So that's a safety feature. Another safety feature is on the back here that you can't see, but it's identical on the right hand side, and that's an emergency stop button. So if you or parts of you end up in this roller, you can quick hit that and it turns everything off and stops it. On occasion, you move this thing around and push it around, and it has a cover on it. Sometimes these will get pushed in, so when you turn it on, it makes this kind of crazy beeping sound. And it sounds like this. So that just means that you need to turn this thing, and then it's up and ready to go. It's got 3 different ways to control it. So it's got a little foot pedal down here, which I really like, and you can have the foot pedal on the front. So there's the foot pedal. You can put the foot pedal in front, or you can put it around on the back. So this is pretty handy, especially if you're working this machine by yourself, because you kind of need your hands free to manage the stuff that you're laminating. This is the main control panel. It's got a reverse, which is just a lie. Don't even believe it, because this thing does not reverse. The motor reverses, but once that lamination gets going, it's sticky, it's glue, and you can hit reverse all you want and it's not going to reverse. So don't pay attention to the reverse. It's got a stop button, you need to know where that is, and then it's got a forward button. It has a temp setting, and it has a speed control. So I generally take the temp and kind of hit the up button a couple of times. You can see the little light, and it'll beep. And you know, medium temperature seems to work just fine. Many times the speed at the slowest speed is plenty fast for me. Depends on what I'm doing, but a lot of times there's a lot happening, and I don't want to go any faster than what it's going. Maybe once you get kind of a workflow going, you can run the speed up a bit, but I generally leave it just alone. Then way over here, all that stuff is kind of duplicated on this crazy little mouse-like thing. So it's got run, stop, and reverse. And again, you can kind of put this, you know, wherever. You can walk around, maybe hold this and hold this at the same time, but it's got a little Velcro to hold it back there. Okay, one more thing here. We've got another kind of take-up spool, if you want, on the bottom. So you could actually put laminate on the bottom and laminate on the top, so you kind of sandwich your stuff in between. We generally just do the one side. So this is just extra paper. And the extra paper is on there because it's really, really, really bad if the laminate that's very sticky gets stuck to the roller on the bottom. So we need something in between the two. So I got just this leftover paper. It's actually this roll. When this gets enough paper on here, I just transfer it down here, and we use this kind of as a carrier sheet. The sign company that I talked about before, they had a big chunk of paper or board or whatever that had been laminated many times. They just run the same thing through and cut it off and then reuse it. We do that sometimes. So over here we have a dial that will allow you to adjust how thick your material is, and it will go all the way up to, I think, a 1/2 inch. So you can literally take a 1/2 inch piece of plywood and laminate it. You can run it through this machine and laminate it. That's not uncommon, again, for the sign company, the sign industry. Right now it's loose, it's just kind of hanging there because they say it's not good to keep it clamped tight because it'll get a flat spot. If you remember when I talked about the roller being crowned, you don't want a flat spot on your rollers. So you're not supposed to leave this tight, but when you use it, obviously it has to be tight. So I'm going to tighten it up and lock it in. So now it's all kind of locked in there. So let's see, anything else on here? I think we're in pretty good shape to actually use this. A couple of things. This is basically exposed to the air, and the air has, aside from COVID virus, it's got particles of dust and whatever, and it's very likely landed on here. You won't see it until you run that nice beautiful white vinyl through, and then you might see little bits of dust and crud on it. So generally speaking, it's going to have this cover over it. So we'll put this dust cover over it. The problem is you can't put the dust cover over it when the thing's still hot. So you got to wait for it to cool down. By that time, you're on to something else, and the dust cover doesn't always get put on it. The way around that is to go ahead and run a little through before you laminate your project. There's a little separator bar right here, so your stuff that you're laminating goes below it. Sometimes if you're not careful, this can actually touch the glue part, and that again is a big mess and rather time consuming to fix. So you need to be kind of cautious of that. There's another whole lesson on loading this. There's a little manual and a little chart, and basically it shows the path that the laminate has to go, and it's a little convoluted, it's a little confusing if you don't look at the chart, at least for me. But basically I think we're pretty well set to go here. To get this started, we have to have some paper on the front side of this, the front end of this. We don't need really any in the middle, but when we get to the end, we can't just run this all the way through and let the vinyl stick to the roller. It'll wrap itself around, it'll get wound up in there, and it's probably a good half a day to take apart and fix and put back. That would be really terrible. So either we cut this, run it through, and when we get to the end, we add a little bit of paper to finish running the rest of this through, or we can just leave it. If we leave it, you'll notice that this isn't perfectly straight, and we might end up with a little wrinkle in it. So, you know, it's kind of a toss-up on what's best. I think we're going to leave it, and we're going to hope for the best. So Maureen and I are going to push this in until it touches the laminate. So go ahead and push it right in there. Okay, just like that. Okay, now it's kind of stuck to the laminate, so you know it should be fine. Many times a sign shop will have like a little duster, and they'll kind of dust like the little hairs or whatever. Microfibers are really good for that, so as this thing's going through, we can kind of wipe it down. Okay, I think we're about set to go. So I'm going to ask Maureen to step on the foot pedal. Not yet. We're going to step on the foot pedal. I'm going to go around and make sure actually the thing's coming through. You can be fooled on this side, like, hey, everything's great, it's going in, it's going through, only to find out that it's not coming out the other end. So it's actually wrapping itself around, and I've already told you that's a bad thing. We don't want that. So Moraine's going to be ready to stop it if she has to. If this paper isn't on here just right, the sticky vinyl will stick to the platen on the other side, which will jam everything up, and then we've got that scenario that I've already mentioned. Okay, so I'm going to laminate that here so we can see what happens. Okay, anytime, Moraine. Try again. So, interesting. So, yeah, so that micro switch, remember I said that micro switch sometimes gets a little sticky. Okay, so the good news is it's coming out the back side, so that's fantastic. I do see this is wrinkling up a little bit. Hopefully it's not going to affect our job. Not liking the sounds of that so much. Everything's good on this side. Our hair got nice and laminated down flat. Okay, we're going to keep going, keep going. Now the vinyl, the image is just starting to come around the other side now. And we're continuing on, keep going, keep going, keep going. Okay, stop. All right, now this is getting a little bit messy. Sometimes you just kind of poke into the little groove here and cut that off. And now that it's nice and straight again, we can tape it on here and get it nice and flat, and then we won't have that problem hopefully the next time through. I'm just going to let it hang for now, but we got to know that if we ran this all the way through without paper under here, the laminate's going to stick to the roller. And if you did this in your new job at the sign shop, you probably won't get Employee of the Month that month. Okay? All right, so on the back side here, they got kind of an ingenious little thing. I think, Mrs. Hunt, if you go on the other side, there's a little blade called a plunge cutter, and it slides along a little tray, a little channel. And so I'm going to slide it to the middle, and I'm going to push it down or plunge it in, and then pull it back towards me, and that's going to cut this paper off. Okay, and then Maureen's going to do the same, going her way. All right, so grab that, Maureen. All right, so hey, look at that. We got a laminated bunch of stickers. Now what we have to do is we have to free it from this. We're all done with this backing, so we've got to free it from the backing. So we'll take our X-Acto knife, and I'm just going to use kind of the edge of the laminate, or I'm sorry, the vinyl, as kind of a guideline, and just lightly get down into the top layer here. I'm not really even trying to cut all the way through. But if you do cut through, it's not going to hurt. Okay, so that's now free there. Debbie, you want to cut that side for me? Get that out of your way. And Maureen, I'll let you cut that side.